Dennis's signature piece of legislation is the Gallagher Amendment. It reflected his concern for seniors and property taxes.
His passion, and particularly as Colorado was growing in the 70s and into the 80s economically, is to make sure that those individuals in North Denver who had owned houses all their life, would not going to be overly burdened by a huge property tax burden and have to sell their houses.
Stoked by the tax revolt that began in California with Proposition 13, property taxes were the hot-button issue in Colorado in 1982.
There was a significant tax revolt underway in Colorado because there had been a reassessment. People's tax bills had gone up significantly. I mean, in some cases, a residential property owner, their valuation might have doubled and their taxes doubled. I remember the beginning of the session when the senators would come back after the weekend, there was a lot of talk about meetings that they had gone to over the weekend in high school gymnasiums or auditoriums where maybe 600 or 1,000 people had been out very concerned about what was happening with property taxes.
In those days, the Governor Dick Lamb in 1982, set the legislative agenda, or call, in even-numbered years. Maria Garcia Berry was his chief budget lobbyist.
Dick Lamb and his staff, and hey, we were there, made a public policy decision, that they were not going to put the subject of property taxes on the 1982 call. Not going to happen, which meant that there could never be a bill introduced on property taxes, except one thing. The governor of the state of Colorado has no control over constitutional amendments to the Constitution. So one very crafty, hardworking, quiet, unassuming rancher from Hugo, Colorado by the name of Bev Bledsoe knew he needed to make a deal. And he made that deal with Dennis Gallagher and Ron Stewart. And he went to them and said, what would it take for you all to support my amendment to the Constitution to fix property taxes once and for all? And that's where the ingenuity and the genius of both Ron Stewart and Dennis Gallagher, understanding how to work the process, said, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to tell you what it is. That's how the Gallagher Amendment was born.
The Democrats really felt like it was our job to do what we could in this constitutional amendment to protect residential property owners, because there were plenty of other people at the legislature at that time and in the vestibule outside the legislature who were there to protect all kinds of other property, industrial property, commercial property, agricultural property, whatever.
We said that homes should never get above 45% of the total property tax pie. And that will keep homes and residences in balance compared to the vast increases we were seeing on residential property tax in the early 1980s.
The measure passed with 65% of the vote. But then, and now, it has its critics.
It was a good idea at the time, but I don't think anybody, including Dennis, could have seen into the future that we were going to pass the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, the Tabor Amendment, that we would pass Amendment 23 that had to do with funding for public schools. And so while the Gallagher Amendment was probably a pretty good idea, it actually becomes very restrictive for a governor and a legislature to budget.
And it's had serious fiscal impacts on the state and as far as school finance is concerned.
When I first went in the legislative body, the state funded about 42 to 45% of schools. It's up to 65, 67% now. And it's all because of Gallagher and Tabor.
It's had all kinds of problems with the business personal property tax and its impact on businesses, which fall upon us at the county and municipal and other local government levels with the way we collect property taxes. So it's complicated.
You know, it's a provision of the Constitution. There aren't many provisions that help the common person or the average Coloradan. We have tax break after tax break that benefit various businesses, the wealthy, special interests. There aren't a whole lot that really benefit kind of the more general common person, average person in Colorado. This is the one that does. Your property tax, my property tax, anyone in this room's property tax on their home would probably be double now what it would have been if the Gallagher Amendment hadn't passed. So I say, you know, anyone who wants to go out and say, would you like to double your property taxes, is going to have a little difficult time doing that.